It's hard for Leo Cullen to, not do the... Yeah, and you keep saying all my best players. What the hell do you expect, lads? Because certainly that's what he must be thinking.
Yeah. The two people that you look at with most puzzlement is Carberry and Jordy Murphy. Both would have been in the matchday 23 yesterday. Murphy may have started. Carberry would have been a great guy to have been able to bring off the bench for the last 10 or 15 minutes if Leinster needed to find something and change things up. I'm not saying he would have come on for Sexton, but there could have been some sort of a rejig whether Carberry wore 15 or Sexton moved into play 12. But if it continues to happen, they're going to lose Jack McGrath, who's part of their matchday 23 on Sunday or on Saturday. He's gone.
Sean O'Brien's gone.
Sean O'Brien's gone. Well, that's a little different. I mean, that's just sort of the passage of time, and he probably wasn't been offered a central contract, and that's a decision he's made himself. It's not a disaster for Leinster that a 33-year-old Sean O'Brien's leaving. But if the drip continues, it is going to become an issue for them. It already is an issue. Like, they are grooming these brilliantly talented young guys and then seeing them move against their will. There's no doubt that Leo Cullen is annoyed by the way this has gone.
Yeah. Moving against their will is in the players' will?
No, against the will of Leinster.
Right.
But look, you have to look at the big picture, and that's what David Nucifora is doing, and it's what Joe Schmidt's doing, and Philip Bryan is doing. So there's two sides to that argument as well. Is the Irish team what drives Irish rugby and generates the funding and the financial resources to be able to develop academy systems? And
what if we only... Well, they don't generate academy systems. The schools pay for all the academies, really. Like,
an awful lot of the money that's generated by the international side gets played back into the provinces, which in turn is the next step for these academy graduates.
I mean, I wonder about that, right? Like, I wonder, is most of the money that goes to from the international stuff not paying the international teams? So this
obviously pays their wages, yes.
Yeah, and then...
but there's more to it than that. It also funds sevens rugby, women's rugby, 20s rugby.
Which they've slashed the budgets on women's rugby. So they spent a bit of money on sevens rugby, fair enough. Like, I just wonder if we've got by making the Ireland team the be-all and end-all, you put all your eggs in that basket, and if we go out at the quarterfinals, does that mean the last 4 years has all been wrong?
Well, not really. By making the Ireland team the be-all and end-all, you're also subscribing to the theory that you have to have your best players playing at home. And if guys aren't getting to play rugby, eventually the players themselves will look to move on. And I'd rather they moved down to Munster or up to Ulster or went out west to Connacht than go to the Premiership to the top 14. Now, you could also say that, yes, they may all be contracted to the Irish provinces. Whether people actually get to go and see these guys week in, week out is a different argument, because so few of the appearances that are made by Ireland's top players come on the Pro 14.
So
I'm arguing against all my points while at the same time proposing them. It's okay. A really complex situation.
Yeah, it is complicated. It is complicated because we're seeing increasingly the clubs are becoming the power brokers in English and French rugby, and we either decide that we're building club teams that can compete with those teams, or we're saying that no, we're obviously you're trying to have clubs that can compete with those teams, and we're doing okay, semi-finalists and finalists in the European Cup would suggest that that's okay. But equally, what we're really saying is the international team is the be-all and end-all of Irish rugby. Like, that's the thing that we're concerned about most. And over a period of time, it's going to get harder and harder for Leinster and Munster to compete if we're like, okay, we need 4 scrum halves, and so every province has to have one, as opposed to one of our teams is going to be in a European Cup final and the scrum half might get injured or the out half might get injured, and you don't have a replacement who is international level because we've sent that international level replacement off to one of the other provinces to make sure they get game time. And you're like, okay, well, that's so you better win your quarterfinals, because if you don't, what's the point? The previous system delivered exactly the same results.
It did. It wasn't delivering Six Nations championships, though, with the same regularity as we've enjoyed over the last 10 years. It wasn't delivering Grand Slams. Like, we expect a semi-final place now. Some people might even expect a final place. But to say that the lot of the international team has not improved dramatically in the last 10 years would be inaccurate. Yes, we made big progress under Eddie O'Sullivan, won a couple of Triple Crowns.
We've also had our best generation ever of players.
We did under Eddie O'Sullivan's reign, I would have thought, more so than the last 10 years.
The current the last 18 months, we've had greater strength and depth than we've ever had at every.
And why is that?
I mean,
because they're getting to play regularly for their provinces, all 4 of them.
Is that the only reason?
Well, no, it's definitely one of the reasons. Joey Carberry is a much better player now than he was 12 months ago because he has got to play Heineken Cup rugby all season. He's got to play against Leinster a couple of times in the Pro 14.
But you don't know that he wouldn't have developed at that same rate.
He just wouldn't. Well, how could he develop at the same rate if he made 0 starts in Leinster's run to the Heineken Cup final this year?
He would have started. He was so good this year that...
Well, he would have started the games that Sexton didn't, so he would have started the same number of games that Ross Byrne did.
Or he could have started at full back, or they could have mixed things up. Like, he's such a good player. I think that what they decided
he's
was...
a much better fly half now than he was a year ago.
Well, fair enough. But like, you would expect year on year that he's going to get better until he reaches his peak. So, like, I don't know whether or not the rate is as accelerated as everybody says it is. And then he also suffered the injuries that he's had. So, but
he'll see himself
individual case, right? You can take these individual case and go, well, that individual case proves it. But I would argue that the grand philosophy has been we have to reach a semi-final, and so the eggs are now in the basket of the senior international side, and we'll have to revisit this after the World Cup and see what happens.
And do you think it's worth it if we do reach a semi-final?
Well, then you've decided this is what you want to achieve, and you've achieved it, so you have to see the plan worked at that point. But the damage and the risk is that next season it'll be Saracens, Racing, and another good English team who I don't know which of them is going to be good next year. Maybe it'll be Exeter or somebody, and we're like, okay, strung out from the lack of depth that we have, because every time a good young player comes through, somebody gets moved away.